Hello, and welcome to the penultimate video in the High Score series. This video will turn to the future of video game music, and I'll be thinking about 3 different areas of development: concerts, virtual reality, and mobile gaming. These are incredibly diverse and exciting areas, particularly for music lovers, so stick around if you're interested, or indeed, if you're trying to work out what you want for Christmas. Coming at you live. Listening to game soundtracks on YouTube is all well and good, until they are copyright struck out of existence, obviously, but as any classical music fan will tell you, nothing quite beats a live performance. Luckily for us, video game music concerts have really started taking off in the last decade. Fan-run concerts, like Video Games Live, and official concerts, such as the Legend of Zelda themed Symphony of the Goddesses, have sold out classical music venues around the world, offering audiences a brand new musical experience. They often run programs of both original works and new arrangements or medleys, depending on how much freedom they have to alter and perform certain music. Here's a clip taken from a Symphony of the Goddesses tour in 2011. Notice how full and reactive the audience is. There's definitely no social distancing going on here. Why are these events proving so popular, especially in a world where classical music concerts are struggling to get by? For a start, they attract 2 different types of person. Classical musicians will be drawn to the event. They like dressing up in fancy ties and suits, and going to nice venues and sitting in expensive seats while listening to music society has deemed important. Of course, these concerts will have slightly different rules to the ones this group might be used to. Listen to this clip taken from a Video Games Live tour. Notice how the audience cheered for their favourite themes. If you cheered like this in a classical concert, you'd be kicked out. You're not even meant to cough during performances. On the complete flip side, game fans will be attracted by the music, tracks which hold deep and emotional meanings to them. All the concepts and techniques I've described throughout this series latch on to players, and they want to hear more. In addition, they'll be drawn by a community spirit, wanting to feel part of a larger group. These groups will often have little to no overlap with each other, and so video game concerts attract 2 very distinct groups of people. Of course they're going to be popular. Another factor in their success is the emotional aspect. It might be helpful to think back to last week's video about remixes. Remixes are so successful because their authors are expressing emotion. They are releasing a part of themselves and fusing it with the game. Concerts are a bit like this too. Hearing a piece of game music in real life, in a setting completely detached from the game itself, could be considered validating. It's just as much a piece of music as anything written by Mozart or Beyoncé. This goes for composers too. Watch this interview with Civilization composer Christopher Tin, taken from the Video Games Live concert series.
As a composer, I mean, it's one of the most amazing things to see your music on stage performed live and to hear audiences cheering for it. And I mean, I'll never forget the first time it happened. Video Games Live was doing a performance at the Hollywood Bowl, and the lights went down and the opening notes to my Civilization music started playing, and the audience already started cheering. And they had already heard this music, even though this is the first time it was being played live, and it was just an overwhelming feeling.
Hearing their pieces performed live in front of an audience isn't something many video game composers experience. Some companies are beginning to branch out into virtual settings. In 2019, Fortnite held a concert within its game world featuring electronic artist Marshmello. The event drew in over 10 million players at the time. What kind of physical venue would have that capacity? To date, the YouTube recording has been streamed over 55 million times. This is one of the big advantages of virtual events. They're much more accessible to everyone. There could be any number of reasons why someone might not be able to attend a physical concert. They might be strapped for cash, a young person whose guardians don't want to make the trip, or, for talking's sake, they might be living through a global pandemic. Virtual concerts get around this issue by bringing the concert to you. And while they might not cater to a classical audience, or even the wider gaming community, they more than make up for this lost ground by attracting their target audience. Fortnite is, primarily, aimed at a young audience who wouldn't normally be able to travel to concerts. Solution? An online concert that you can go to in your own bedroom. Nintendo have also created a hybrid concert event to promote their Splatoon series. The games feature fictional pop star duos, each with their own collection of music used within the games themselves. In the concert series, these mascots are projected as holograms in front of huge audiences to perform their singles. Concerts can have big positives for companies. They excite and build up the existing fanbase while also exposing games to new audiences too. And, in the case of physical events at least, they are a huge source of income. Alternative realities. Virtual reality is the term used to describe technology that immerses a player fully in a new world. The Virtual Reality Society defines it as a three-dimensional, computer-generated environment which can be explored and interacted with by a person. That person becomes part of this virtual world, or is immersed within this environment, and whilst there, is able to manipulate objects or perform a series of actions. The technology is still in its early days. You might have seen various articles about experimental releases by big companies like Google or Facebook. As with most new technologies, the bottom line, for now at least, is that VR is too expensive to mass produce. Of course, this will likely change as time goes on. Where it has been implemented, it suits the exploration genre over any other. The whole point of adventure games is to immerse the player, and what better way to do that than by literally placing them in the game world itself. The technology holds massive implications for immersion. Everything I said in video 8 about games being lies projected onto 2D screens vanishes. These games are 3D. They exist around the player, not in front of them. In these games, sound is still important. Audio will come at the player from all around them. But the visuals have caught up, if you like, becoming just as, if not more, important to the immersion. Where virtual reality has made its way to other genres, the results are particularly interesting. Beat Saber is a rhythm game in which the player is required to smash colour-coded blocks in time to music. The catch? The player's inputs come in the form of two sabres of light, which they must swing in the correct direction. A headset is used to show the player where the blocks are and when to hit them. Think of it like Just Dance on steroids, not something you want to try at Christmas with your tipsy grandparents. This hybrid of movement and rhythm could potentially be a whole new route for rhythm games to go down, not just testing the player's timing, but also the accuracy of their movements. Rhythm games could be advertised as fitness routines, dance games, even a virtual reality band manager. The possibilities with this one are endless. Pocket consoles. Mobile gaming is one of the fastest growing markets out there. Regardless of whether you measure it in terms of number of games, it's estimated that there were over 385 million mobile games on the various stores as of the third quarter of 2020, or in terms of number of players, 2.4 billion globally and growing. The industry is so vast that it's difficult to get your head around. And okay, perhaps this doesn't count as the future. Mobile gaming is definitely already here, but that doesn't mean it won't change and adapt as technology develops. Why are mobile games so popular? One reason could be that everyone has a phone. Currently, around 3.8 billion people own a smartphone. To put that in perspective, the Nintendo Switch, by far the most popular current-gen console, has sold 67.8 million units. Even the most popular console of all time, the PlayStation 2, only sold 157 million units. For every PS2 out there, there's another 24 smartphones. And okay, maybe not every single one of these phones will be used for Fortnite or Call of Duty or even Flappy Birds, but lots of them will be used for solitaire. Lots will be used for crosswords or Sudokus or other puzzles. And how many mums out there will be playing Candy Crush right now? Not things we might consider traditional games, but they're games nonetheless. There are a few major design differences between console titles and mobile titles. For a start, the control schemes will mostly be based on touch, not physical controllers. This might create some problems, but the large area of phone screens opens up a lot of new options. Playtime is another major factor. How long might you sit playing on a console? An hour? 2 hours? Maybe more if it's not a school night. How long do you play on your phone for in one go? 5 minutes? Waiting for the bus to arrive? The difference in attention span between these is massive, and it means mobile soundtracks will never get the same opportunity to catch the player's attention, to hook them in. And by this point, you might have already cottoned on to the big one, the most important difference in mobile soundtracks, the one issue that causes composers and sound designers to have nightmares: volume. Mobile games will spend the vast majority of their playtime muted. You don't want to subject your fellow tube passengers to the sound of gunshots, do you? You don't want everyone around you in a busy street to know you still play Fortnite. Games like these will be muted, and there's nothing that the developers can do about it. So where does that leave composers? Writing music for games which they know fine well will only ever be heard for a few minutes, at most. Music can still play a role in the initial bite of mobile games. Often you'll have to mute sound from within the app itself when you first download it. This is the composer's chance to impress you and convince you to play this game over the thousands of others you could download instead. It's not a big chance, but it's the best they can do. So, to recap, mobile game soundtracks might only be heard for a few minutes. They are important in forming good first impressions to hook the player. They can't be too irritating, or the player will mute them faster or just uninstall. And they have to fit into tiny storage capacities. Doesn't this sound familiar? If you're frantically clicking back to video 2 to listen to the section on arcade music, then you've hit the nail on the head. In some strange way, we've come full circle back to composing for arcade machines. Obviously, the quality of sound has improved quite a bit since, but there's no denying that composers are still facing the same challenges as they did almost 50 years ago. It's not all doom and gloom for mobile composers though. As with any platform saturated with games, the mobile market has its share of rhythm and music titles, often focusing on simple button pressing. Sound is obviously a little more important in these games. Some other titles are trying to encourage players to unmute by highlighting and adding to their soundtracks. The latest entry in the Bloons Tower Defense series, Bloons TD6, has recently begun adding new music tracks to its game store for players to purchase with in-game currency. Some of these are brand new, while others are remixed versions of existing tracks. In addition, the game has an extensive sound effect collection, with different sounds for different effects. You can hear some of them in this clip.
This is my territory.
Conclusion. There's never been a better time to enjoy video games than right now. From concerts to mobile games, virtual realities to new technologies, there are so many different areas of music which are revolutionising the gaming experience beyond anything we've ever seen before. Concerts, both official and fan-led, allow players and musicians to come together to celebrate video game music. Non-gamers can be introduced to new experiences, and composers can see their works in a brand new light. Virtual concerts are also beginning to take off, with games hosting real-life musicians and pop stars to draw in huge audiences. It also allows some groups who wouldn't usually be able to attend a physical concert to share the same experience. Virtual reality completely immerses the player in a new world, sometimes allowing them to explore freely. While the technology isn't quite mainstream yet, some exploration games have taken full advantage, and this has massive implications for the concept of immersion that we've spoken about so often throughout this series. When VR and music games collide, titles like Beat Saber are created, where the player's movements are hyper important to the gameplay, as opposed to simply tapping screens or pushing buttons. This could be used to deliver even more realistic fitness experiences, or more entertainment-based systems, like dance games. Mobile games are already fairly established, but with the technology developing so quickly, games could be unrecognisable in only a few years. Mobile titles tend to face some difficult problems in the sound department, mainly that they'll spend much of their time muted. Composers have to use the short exposure time they have to hook the player, and perhaps even convince them to unmute once in a while. Some mobile games use music as a main mechanic, and some feature it heavily to encourage players to keep listening, not just looking. In many ways, the composition of mobile soundtracks is similar to that of arcade machines. That's it for the penultimate video in this series. I've covered just about everything from the very start of video game music to what might be just around the corner. I'm particularly excited to see where mobile gaming goes next. Once technological constraints begin to loosen, who knows what kind of music games will start to appear. These are my references for the video, as well as a slightly more wide-ranging music list than is normal. In a slight change to the schedule, the next video will be the final in the series, my conclusion. I'll be attempting to cram all of my key points into one video, as well as touching on some areas I didn't manage to cover. It might not sound very interesting, but hey, if you've made it this far, what harm will one more do, right? I'll see you then.